Whereas humans eat food to gain energy, plants are able to make their own through photosynthesis.
Photosynthesis is the conversion of radiant energy from the sun into chemical energy in the form of glucose.
In order to undergo photosynthesis, plants have to open up pore-like openings and intake CO2 and release O2 in water.
What are those pores called?
Xylem,
Stomata.
Or phloem?
Stomata!
Lots of sunlight and heat means photosynthesis can take place, so plants want to open their stomata and intake CO2.
But lots of sunlight and heat also means lots of water evaporation, and plants don't want that.
So what do plants do during hot, dry days?
Open stomata to photosynthesize,
Close stomatas.
Or both?
On hot, dry days, the plants keep their stomata closed, and that creates a lot of problems for photosynthesis.
Keeping stomata closed may prevent the plant from drying out, but it also prevents the intake of CO2 and release of O2.
Oxygen is a competitive inhibitor and competes with carbon dioxide for the active site on rubisco.
Rubisco binds O2 instead of CO2 to RUBP and photorespiration occurs.
Whoa!
Photosynthesis is very negatively affected when photorespiration occurs.
When rubisco adds oxygen to RUBP, the result is one useful 3-carbon molecule and one useless 2-carbon molecule. A lot of carbon is wasted.
Photorespiration can drain away as much as 50% of the carbon fixed by the carbon cycle on a very hot, dry day.
Photorespiration also does not produce any ATP or build up any sugars, so if photorespiration occurs, growth stops.
So what can plants do to prevent this?
Let's find out!
There are 2 types of plants that have evolved to combat photorespiration. What are they?
C4
And Chem.
Bob the Cobb can tell you more about C4 plants.
Some plants have evolved over time in order to survive in hotter environments like me. We C4 plants allow CO2 to move into the first layer of cells and immediately fix into a 4-carbon molecule instead of a 3-carbon molecule.
What is the name of those cells?
The mesophyll cells. This reaction requires a leaf with 2 types of cells and a special enzyme.
What is the special enzyme used to catalyze this reaction?
Phosphophenylpyruvate carboxylase, also known as PEP carboxylase. I use this key enzyme to add CO2 to PEP in order to form oxaloacetate. Since PEP carboxylase has a high affinity for CO2, it's able to fix CO2 efficiently when rubisco is not. My mesophyll cells will then pump these 4-carbon compounds off to the next stage of the reaction.
Where did the mesophyll cell pump the 4-carbon compound?
The bundle sheath. My bundle sheath then strips 1 carbon dioxide molecule away from the 4-carbon compound and sends the original 3-carbon compound right back to the mesophyll cells. My bundle sheath cells, with the help of rubisco, is then able to start the next reaction with the abundance of CO2. In order to keep rubisco accepting CO2 instead of O2, I use my mesophyll cells to continue pumping the CO2 into the bundle sheath cells in order to keep CO2 levels high enough. In order to complete this reaction, I use a lot more energy than C3 plants.
How much ATP does a C4 reaction need?
Therefore, C4 plants, like me, have a huge advantage over C3 plants in hot, tropical environments.
Thanks, Bob. That was very educational.
Thanks, pal. But what happens if the environment's way too hot for even C4 plants like me?
Our buddy Prickly Rick can tell you more about that.
Hi, I am a chem plant.
What are examples of chem plants?
Cacti and pineapples.
As a cactus, I live in a very dry and hot environment. My desert friend and I have our own way of surviving. While these little pussies have water spoon-fed to them, I've learned to use my brain to survive.
What do canned plants do to survive? Store water, store CO2, or store glucose?
In order to survive, I have to prevent myself from drying out. I close my stomata up during the day to prevent the harsh sun from evaporating all my hard-earned water, and open up only at night.
During the night, what happens to the CO2 in a canned plant?
It is stored in malate so I can use it later during the day. Nighttime is when I suck in CO2 through my stomata and store it for use during the day. I use my PEP carboxylase enzyme to trap all the CO2 into malate and store them in the mesophyll cell. When daytime comes, the malate I store is changed into CO2 and I can use that to fuel the Calvin cycle. And that is how I survive in an extremely hot climate.
In C4 plants, carbon fixation and the Calvin cycle are spatially separated.
That was good.
And in canned plants, carbon fixation and the Calvin cycle are temporarily separated.
But both eventually use the Calvin cycle to incorporate light energy into the production of sugar.
Since CO2 is a human waste product and we need it in order to operate, I guess we do need you humble humans around, even if you do eat us for your own energy source.
Keep in mind that humans need our O2 waste to survive as well. Make sure you think about that the next time you decide to be healthy and shout out a salad.
Click on the box to the left to learn the best way to eat corns and cactuses, and click on the box to the right to learn how plants reproduce without touching each other.